Fender is currently the talk of the town because of the cease and desist letters being sent to guitar manufacturers over Strat-style designs. Now, on the surface, that sounds like just guitar industry drama, but as a Studio Pro user, I think this should also matter to us because it gives us a glimpse into how Fender thinks about ownership, control, and the future of its products. Now listen, I'm not here to litigate on the guitar side of things. I'm not a lawyer, and that's not what this channel is about. If you want the full legal breakdown of what's happening there, I'll add some links below to some guitar-focused channels and articles that can cover that way better than I can. However, I do think the broader pattern is worth discussing because whether we like it or not, Fender owns Studio Pro now, and its priorities are going to shape where this dog goes next. So in this video, I want to talk about what the current Fender controversy could reveal about the company's direction, how that might connect to what we've already seen with Studio Pro, and ultimately why I think Studio Pro users should be paying closer attention. I don't know if you've noticed this, but over the years, Fender seems to have been transitioning or has transitioned from a music tool company to more of a music ecosystem company. Obviously, Fender started with guitars, that's the foundation of the brand, but now they don't just have guitars and amps. They also have software, learning platforms, apps, amp modeling, subscriptions, and now a full DAW through Studio Pro. And you know, from a strictly business perspective, that makes sense. Fender is a large privately owned company with investors and debt and growth targets and the same basic pressures any large company has, which is to expand the business and increase the value of its assets. So when you zoom out, an ecosystem approach can make sense. Take Apple, for example. They may have started with computers, but their ecosystem now touches almost every area of your life. Now, obviously, Fender is not Apple, and I'm not saying they're the same company, but the strategy is similar in the sense that the more pieces of the process a company owns, the more control they have over the customer relationship and, of course, the lifetime value of that customer. In other words, more money. Now, the problem, at least from my perspective, is not that Fender wants to grow, because there's nothing inherently wrong with a company trying to expand. The problem is how they're going about it. Additionally, when a company tries to control more and more of an ecosystem, especially when those audiences are adjacent, it can start to lose clarity about who it's actually serving. That's how you also end up with decisions that might make sense in a boardroom, but feel completely disconnected from the people actually using the products. And you know, I think this is actually where Studio Pro users specifically have already started to feel this firsthand. Now, to be clear, I do not think that Fender owning Studio Pro is automatically a bad thing. In fact, there are some real upsides. More resources, more visibility, potentially better updates, and maybe even a bigger future for the DAW. But the question is whether Fender sees Studio Pro as a serious creative tool that needs to serve producers, engineers, and songwriters first, or whether they see it as just another piece of the Fender ecosystem, because that can create some real tension. Case in point is this whole rebrand from Studio One to Studio Pro. I don't know if Fender realizes this, but DAWs are not just regular pieces of software to producers. DAWs are almost like religion. We're already tribal as humans, and so when it comes to the programs that we use to make music, record artists, mix records, and build our workflows around, people get protective. And so to take a DAW with years of history, years of community, and years of identity behind it, and suddenly change the name without a deeper explanation to the community, I think that was a mistake. And listen, I'm not even saying the name change itself was automatically wrong. Maybe there was a good business reason for it. But if that was the case, I think someone from Fender should have sat down in front of a camera and made a dedicated video explaining that to the Studio One community directly. They should have said something like, hey, listen, I know we're changing our names, but that does not mean we're changing our identity. We know how much this program means to the community, and you can be assured that we are still committed to serving music creators first. You know? Because honestly, for something that big, a quick promo or marketing video that briefly touched on the name change was just not enough. And that brings me to the other side of this. Whenever you put everything under the Fender name, Studio Pro doesn't just inherit Fender's resources. It also inherits Fender's reputation and controversies. That's the trade-off of building an ecosystem. So even though Studio Pro has nothing to do with the guitar controversy, it still carries the Fender name. The way people are reacting to the guitar drama is now bleeding into how people talk about Fender as a whole, and by extension, it also affects how some people feel about Studio Pro, and I've seen this firsthand in the comments. In all honesty, I actually like a lot of the updates that have been coming out for Studio Pro. I think there have been some really genuinely useful improvements, but there are people who are not even willing to give those updates a chance because they are upset at Fender as a brand, and I get it. Even if the software itself is good, it can start to feel uncomfortable when the company behind it is making decisions that just rub the community the wrong way. I talk to my wife about this all the time, but I sincerely believe that people don't usually leave jobs. They leave managers. Most of us can put up with some frustrating stuff at work from time to time, but if the manager keeps making the environment uncomfortable, keeps making weird decisions, or just making people feel unheard, you eventually leave. And yeah, in this situation, Fender is the manager. Now, beyond the branding and communication side, I think there's also a product direction question we need to talk about. Over the last few years, we've seen quite a few integrations make their way into Studio Pro. We've had SoundCloud for a while, but with version 7, we also got the TuneCore integration, which honestly, I don't know a single person who uses it. We also got the Splice integration, which I think has been the strongest one so far. And now with 8.1, we have Moises AI. I genuinely want to hear your thoughts on this because maybe you feel differently, but to me, these integrations make me concerned about the direction of Studio Pro. Are we moving towards more third-party partnerships, more features that make sense for the larger Fender ecosystem, but may or may not be what core Studio Pro users are actually asking for? In my opinion, the only integration that has genuinely felt useful to my workflow is Splice. And even then, I would personally trade all of them for deeper development into modern production workflows, especially in the piano roll and impact for hip-hop. So that's where my concern is, because when the most visible updates start to feel like partnerships and ecosystem plays, while some of the core production workflows still feel underdeveloped, I think it's fair to ask where the priority is. Is Studio Pro being developed first as a serious DAW for producers, engineers, and songwriters? Or is it slowly being shaped into another piece of Fender's broader music tech ecosystem? That to me is the real question moving forward. So to bring it all together, I'm not saying Fender is ruining Studio Pro. I'm not saying that every integration is bad. I'm not saying the name change was the end of the world. And I'm definitely not saying Studio Pro is no longer worth using. I still use Studio Pro. I still love this program, and I still think it's one of the best DAWs out there for music creation. So my hope is that Fender proves the concerns wrong. I hope they communicate more clearly. I hope they keep developing this DAW as a serious creative tool first, and I hope they never forget the end user, because at the end of the day, there's no business if no one uses your products. But hey, that's just my take, and now I'd love to hear from you. Do you think Fender is taking Studio Pro in the right direction? Are you excited about the future of the DAW, or are you a little concerned? Let me know down below in the comments. And if you want a full breakdown of version 8 and all that came with it, then you can watch that video right over here.